Hello everyone, welcome back to another two videos. Today I wanted to share with you a couple games that I've played recently. I guess the theme of this one today is actually getting opening moves mixed up, and well, essentially I've been playing recently a lot of E4, E5 games as black. I've been actually really enjoying a lot of the games and a lot of positions that are coming out of it, but one of the downsides of playing a new repertoire is comes obviously learning the entire theory, and you're bound to get quite a few disasters happen from time to time, and particularly out of the E4, E5 lines, loads of fireworks tend to happen, and you've unfortunately got to know your theory in order to survive it. So the first game was actually against, I believe, the player I played in episode 3 or 4, I believe, where I had a lovely Vienna position. In this particular game, though, he managed to absolutely thrash me very, very comfortably. So the game started E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, knight C3, knight F6. So we have what is known as the four knights game. And typical plans here include bishop coming to b5. Also d4 is quite popular as well. You could even also do g3 and get into what is known, I believe, as a Gleck system, which is also very, very popular. But in this particular game, my opponent played a very audacious gambit line, which goes knight takes on e5. And it's got a slight dubious reputation. This is known as the Halloween gambit. There are some good antidotes to it, but it's interesting looking at the database I've got here. Okay, white wins 50% of the time, but white has won 43% of the time, but black has only won 50% of the time. So, you know, it could be an interesting weapon. If I turn on the lead chess database here, funny enough, white is still winning in a lot of positions, so it's maybe not so clear that it's a totally losing variation. If I turn on the engine for a second, though, it will say that black should be up a pawn. It's about 1.2, so interesting that. But in any case, you can probably say that knight takes here is probably the best line, which is what I did. And after d4, I played a mistake here. I played bishop to b4. And I got my move orders mixed up, so I know that bishop b4 in some lines works quite well, but I played a move a little bit too early here, and well, I get myself into a bit of trouble. The best move here is actually just to move back the knight to g6. After e5, okay, you run your other knight back to g8, but after bishop c4, we can maybe argue, okay, we're still up in this position, maybe not so bad. But moves like d5, and after bishop takes c3, c6, so giving back the bishop, and then we play bishop b5 and pin this knight. And we're doing okay here as black. We're not too far behind in development. We're going to hopefully get our other knights to e7 at some point, and then castle short. So we should be doing okay here. In the actual game, what actually happened was I played bishop b4, which is a mistake. After d takes on e5, I captured here. Oh, I captured the knight first, I should say. What I should have done was take here with this knight to do that. But I took with this the bishop, which again was a small mistake as well. B takes on c3. I captured it, and I thought I was doing absolutely fine here. But well, we had a really, really nice move here. And that was queen to g4, really nice move. So he's forking both my knights and my pawn on g7. And there isn't really a good response to this. I'm going to have to lose one of them. I decided to save the knights. So I unleashed this discover check on the queen here now. After queen took on g7, I thought I was absolutely fine by just coming rook to f8. And I thought, this is, okay, I've lost a pawn, I might lose another one. But, you know, I'll develop, I should be okay. In actual fact, bishop to h6 came in, and I was like, no, I'm losing everything now. So I went queen to e7 to try and defend the rook and stop the checkmate. But after a couple of exchanges, now white is clearly ahead. I played c4 to stop this pawn from being captured. I played d4, maybe using the square. Bishop to d3. f5 was played, and I fully expected he would capture en passant. And with that in mind, you might find my next move very strange. After g4, I play knight here. And, well, I made a little bit of a mistake. Basically, I assumed, when you pre-move on chess.com, I assumed that he was going to capture here on f6. I'd already pre-moved my knight to come back to f6. A little bit of a mistake, as after g4 my knight came back to f6, and well, he just won a clear pawn. And I mean, we kind of laughed about it afterwards, and I sort of said, oh, I think I've accidentally pre-moved there, but nonetheless I resigned. I was losing in this position anyway, so I wasn't too bothered about that. So that was the first game. So as I say, yeah, it's always difficult in these very sharp gambity lines. You've got to know your move order and get these things right. So as I say here, if I played knight to g6 first, I would have been much better, and I probably would have survived the position had I done that instead. Going back to our next game, we have the same theme come up. This game is a lot more complicated than the last one. It goes into a very, very sharp line in the two knights defence. So after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, I play knight to f6, and this is a fun black defence called the two knights defence. Now the grandmasters will typically play the move d3, and this leads to a nice solid game. Both sides do quite well in this line, but the other crazy line that's been analysed to death is the move knight to g5. So this is the knight attack variation. Some people might call it the fried liver attack, but this is the crazy line here, and it looks like it's totally losing for black. How is he going to defend this pawn in f7? He does have two ways of doing it. He can do bishop c5, which goes into something known as the Traxler counter gambit. But all you need to know about this is white still does fine here after f takes on bishop takes on f7, king e7. After the bishop moves back to, let's say, here, this should be okay for black. He can't really capture this pawn, and so he just moves his king along, and well, white's position is absolutely fine. I don't think he needs to worry too much here. The critical line comes after knight captures here, and in this position, white can actually get away. Sorry, black can get away with capturing here, and if this occurs, this is really bad for black. He's going to be in a lot of trouble now, as there's going to be a lot of attacking chess going on, and it's very, very difficult to defend in this position. But it's not entirely sound, so a much sounder approach is playing the move d5, and this is a very key move. So this now blocks the communication between the knight and the bishop attacking on f7. So the only real move here is e takes on d5, and after this move, knight comes to a5, and this is one of the oldest chess positions in chess. In theory terms, this is known as the Palermo defense. I believe it was developed in the 16th century. Very, very old defense. But this is the idea. Black goes down a pawn, but he's going to get quite a lead in development, and you'll see why in a minute. The bishop to b5, which is pretty much the only move to hopefully get an advantage for white. The move c6 is played. After d takes on c6, b takes on c6. Now this bishop has to move somewhere. You can play the move f3 with the queen, which is an idea, and I've covered this in another video which I've entitled the Grenada Gambit. It's a very, very interesting line, but typically this bishop will come back to either d3 or e2. Both moves are just as good as each other. So in this particular game, you came back to d3, maintaining the bishops, and well, it's very black should do okay here. Although he's down a pawn, he should be able to push back a lot of the pieces. Notice that this knight is pretty misplaced over here. It's going to have to come back to this sort of square. But black's also got a misplaced knight here. He at some point needs to play the move c5, and then maybe move the knight back to c6. But after the c5 move, he's also got this nice square now on d4. So it's not the end of the world. There's a lot of different counterplay going on in this sort of position. But here I mixed up my move orders, and I think I was thinking about a different line. I think it was the queen f3 line in particular. And normally bishop to e7 is the most popular move. But in this particular position it's slightly different. What you need to understand for black is one of his weaknesses in his position is this e5 square. He needs to be able to get some adequate defense to it, as after this castle moves and knight to f3 and the rook coming to e1, there's going to be a lot of pressure put onto this pawn. So he needs to find some adequate defense. So a much stronger move is actually, there's a various few lines here, but a better plan of action is going to knight to d5, and this just has the idea of exchanging off this knight for this bishop and crippling white's pawn structure. After knight comes to f3, bishop now to d6, so defending that pawn, and a natural move, castling now. Knight to f4. Okay, let's say the rook comes to here, so coming here. There's a couple of captures, and after this, black is doing absolutely fine here. He could take this pawn if he wants to, so knight captures here. But this apparently doesn't really give him that much in this position. So to move like c5, knight c3, bishop b7. Black's getting quite a lot of activity for the lost pawns, so I wouldn't worry too much. God, I can't do these diagonals properly. I wouldn't worry too much in these positions. With that said, there's been about, let's see here, 11 games from this position, and 10 of them have ended in a draw. So you could say actually that maybe this is not so bad for white, but I guess if white is playing for some sort of advantage, playing for the win, you would want to maybe try and avoid going into these lines. So lots of crazy stuff. So it just took one move and I'm already got a bit of an inaccurate position now. So after this I played bishop to e7. Those castles, and I played h6, now hitting the pawn, so hitting the knight. Knight came to e4, I went knight to d5, so I did still have that idea of coming around in this particular plan. Knight came to g3, I castled, and bishop to f5. Now interestingly enough, this position has been reached 7 times in Master Games. But 6 out of those 7 times unfortunately have led to a white win, so you can maybe gauge an idea that this may be not such a good position to be in. The challenge I've got here now is I really don't want to take this this bishop here. After this knight captures, it does not look appetizing at all. This bishop's going to fall. I've got potential pressure still on this e pawn, and I'm still down a pawn. Just bear that in mind, I've got to find good adequate counterplay for the lost pawn, otherwise this is totally a waste of time going into this sort of position. Well, I say waste of time, it's just not a good position to be in. So that is why in this position I moved my bishop out of the way, so I start to hit this rook. I thought why not, but he just adequately defends it with d3, and now this bishop looks a little bit silly over here, not really doing a whole lot. I went bishop to g5, so trying to exchange off these bishops, and after an exchange here he played knight to d2, a really strong move. He's now threatening to come to f3 and fought both the pawn and the queen in this position. Now there's only one game that's still played from this position, and that was the move c5, and that had the idea of coming around with this maneuver. In the actual game, I wanted to kind of get rid of this bishop off this potential square, but in doing so, I created a lot of weaknesses in my position. So here I played g6 to try and push this bishop away. He plays a great move here, knight to f3, so now hitting the queen, and I haven't really got a great way of defending this this e pawn. I was thinking about coming to f6 instead. For whatever reason, I went to e7, and I kind of went, oh, actually, no, that wasn't all that good. Because now I just walk into another tactic after rook to e1, and you can just see my position just looks awful. I've got all these pawn weaknesses everywhere. I've got these pieces that aren't really doing a whole lot. But it's quite interesting because he gives up a knight here, so after g takes an f5, I was thinking, oh, I'm up another piece, so maybe it's not so bad. But in actual fact, you chuck this into an engine, it actually says that white is totally winning. It's giving it 3.6, and I think this has all to do with the fact I've got so many weaknesses everywhere, so many pieces hanging all over the place. but above all, my king is just not a great position to be in. It's very, very loose. So c4 was played here, now hitting my knight, so decentralizing it. I actually gave back the exchange here a little bit. I thought I need to slow him down. This is actually the best move according to the engine, so I was quite happy to spot that. So after I captured with the bishop, I think I'm still up a pawn in this position, but you can see my position really starts to crumble very quickly. He played rook to c1, so now it's hitting the knight, and it's got a dual threat of hitting c6, which can also jump into h6. Once c6 falls as well, this knight becomes quite loose. So I play queen to b4, just trying to hold on to things, but it's really, really for naught. Another move I could play, and the engine suggested it, but it just looks awful. And I did think about it and consider it. It was just capturing here on b2. But after I was looking at the line, queen to c2 just looked really powerful. So I'm hitting quite a lot of squares, and I'm also hitting this knight as well. If he played a move like queen here to defend this knight, he's going to do absolutely excellently here. After knight takes here, my position really starts to crumble. He's now hitting this pawn. If my queen ever moves away to try and help defend over at my king, I'm going to lose this knight here as well. So it just starts to absolutely go down the drain, this position. So definitely not something I wanted to enter into. So I play queen to b4. He now captures here on e5, and I was really happy to see this move. Absolute godsend, because this just helps my defense a little bit. And one thing I would say to some of the beginners who might be watching, when you're defending in these sort of positions, it's always important to try and exchange as much as possible. If you can get rid of your opponent's attacking pieces as quickly as you can, you should be able to hopefully defend the position. So after knight takes on e5, rook takes on e5, I just look to try and exchange stuff off. I'm still down in this position, but at least it wasn't as bad as being checkmated, as you would have seen. So you captured here, I captured back, and okay, my position begins to stabilize, but I'm still losing quite badly here. You can see all the pawn weaknesses I've got. Every single one of these pawns are isolated. These two here are just terrible. They're doubled isolated pawns, which is just awful. So not an appetizing position at all. If you like pawn destruction, this isn't this isn't the video for you. He captured here on f5. And I played the move rook to e6, and this was quite a nice move. I thought, it sort of defends everything as much as I can, and defending key squares. He played the move h6 to sort of give a little breathing space to his king. I played knight to f4. I think I'm just going to try and create as many complications as I can, so I'm now threatening to come into e2. At this point, he then threw in the check. And I was very happy to see this, as now I played rook to g6, and now I'm threatening this g2 square. So it's an X-ray attack on this g2 square. So he had some quite good moves here. He could the move he missed, which would have really helped his position, was the move knight to e7. And it looks strange because it looks like he's just losing a knight. After I captured this knight with my queen, he can take on f4, and he's consolidated his advantage. He's just got rid of one more attacking piece for me, and one more potential problem. And as you can see again, he's still got his 4 isolated pawns, so he should be able to clear this position up, hopefully quite easily. His king's nice and safe too. If his king wasn't very safe in a queen endgame, perhaps I could have maybe got a perpetual check or some drawing chances, but it's just not going to happen in this position. So going back, so after I defended, he then took on h6, and I wish I took my time a bit more. I mean, to be fair, I only had maybe 2 minutes left on my clock, so I was maybe rushing here a little bit, and I thought, okay, if he plays that, I'm going to just play this immediately. So I said, okay, I'm going to play this straight away. And actually, I totally regretted it. I missed a win here in this position. Here, what I should have played was king to h7. And you can see here now I've got a fork going on. This knight is under attack, but also this rook is still attacking the queen, so he's going to have to lose a piece. If he plays the move queen to f5, which exploits this pin, I can just take this the knight, so I'm absolutely fine here. And if he plays this move to try and hold on to everything, this just ends in total disaster. So I may play the move knight to e2, and this comes with a check, but it's a discovered attack on the queen as well. So really, really nice move. So I didn't play that. Instead, I played this, and I run into another check. So I moved my king to f8, and my position's totally lost here. But for whatever reason, my opponent just seemed to, I don't know, just seemed to play really, really bad moves. So he first played queen to h4, which is a dreadful move. Okay, he is threatening this potential check, although I can defend that quite easily, so I wasn't too worried about that. He is also threatening this potential check, but what I totally missed in this position was this incredibly powerful move. Well, I did play it actually. I played knight to e2, but what I couldn't see was the continuation here. So I was thinking in my head, okay, this knight comes here, it checks the king, it checks the rook. I'm also counter-attacking this queen here. So after the move, let's say king to f1, in my head I seem to have, for some reason, after queen takes, knights, he captures back, I capture his rook, he captures my rook. And for some reason in my head, I didn't just see, oh, f takes on g8, g6. I don't know why. I don't know why. Because this is totally winning. You know, I've got a knight. Okay, I've only got 3 pawns versus 5. It might be a little bit difficult, but this knight should be able to pick up at least 1 or 2 pawns in this position. I should be absolutely fine. As long as I get my king as active as I can and watch out for these pawns. This is a totally winning endgame. So I totally missed this particular move. So here he played king to h2, and in this position I played the final blunder, which was queen to d2. So this had the idea of hitting this rook but also defending this d8 square, and as soon as I played it I just went, oh no, this is totally losing. This can't work. This can't work at all. You know, what he should have played would just be captures on c6, and he's doing absolutely fine. There's no problems in his position whatsoever. I can't take this rook here, as this will run straight into a h8 mate. So this doesn't work at all. I would have to try and play for, basically give up an exchange just to stay in this position with the move queen here. After queen takes, rook, sorry, after queen takes, maybe just throw in the kitchen sink against him, but this totally loses. But miraculously, and you wouldn't understand it, my opponent resigned. I honestly cannot believe why he resigned. I have absolutely no idea. Maybe he thought he was totally losing here. But he resigned in this position, and I was so happy. I was like, "Oh my god, what the hell? How did I win this game?" So, so there we go. What a crazy game that was. Lots of tactics, lots of things going on, lots of missed opportunities. But thankfully, I was able to come out on top in this position. So there we are, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll hopefully keep loading some more in the future. Take care. Bye.